The morning sun over the rolling green hills of the Whispering Meadows wasn't just bright. It was gold, filtering through the lush grass like a scene from a dream. Dr. Sarah Miller, a wildlife veterinarian with a decade of experience, was finishing her morning rounds in her white rescue SUV. The air was cool, the breeze carried the scent of blooming wildflowers, and everything felt unusually peaceful. But in the world of nature, peace is often the prelude to something extraordinary. As she rounded a gentle curve, a massive shape emerged from the emerald landscape. A majestic male lion, his golden mane glowing in the soft daylight, stepped directly into the path of the vehicle. Sarah's breath hitched. Usually, a lion in the road means a display of dominance or a territorial warning. But this lion, whom she later named Arthur, did something that defied every textbook Sarah had ever read. He didn't roar. He didn't crouch. Instead, he stood tall, looked directly into the windshield with soft, pleading amber eyes, and slowly raised his front paws in a gesture that looked hauntingly like a human prayer. It was a silent, desperate cry for help that no soul could ignore. The tension inside the SUV was thick, not out of fear of an attack, but from the sheer weight of the moment. Sarah's partner, Liam, kept his foot firmly on the brake, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Sarah, you stay in the car. That's the rule. Always," he whispered, his eyes locked on the 400-pound predator standing just feet away. But Sarah saw something Liam didn't. She didn't see a predator. She saw a messenger. Arthur the lion wasn't pacing. He was trembling, his gaze darting between Sarah and the thicket of trees just off the main trail. "He's not hunting us, Liam. Look at his eyes. He's terrified for someone else," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. She reached for her medical kit, moving with the slow, rhythmic grace required when dealing with wild giants. Against all protocols, she cracked the door open. The sound of the latch clicking felt like a gunshot in the quiet morning air. As soon as her boots hit the soft, damp grass, Arthur didn't move toward her. Instead, he let out a low, huffing sound, a vocalization of relief, and turned his back, trotting a few yards toward the dense green brush before stopping to look back. It was an invitation. Sarah followed, her heart drumming a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Every few steps, Arthur would pause, his magnificent tail twitching, ensuring Sarah was still behind him. They moved through the vibrant meadow, the long grass brushing against Sarah's khakis. It was a surreal procession, a human doctor being led through the wilderness by the king of the jungle. To an outsider, it would look like a death march, but to Sarah, it felt like a sacred duty. Arthur wasn't leading her to a kill, he was leading her to a crisis. The deeper they went, the more the birds seemed to fall silent, as if the meadow itself was holding its breath. Arthur moved with purpose, bypassing easier paths to navigate toward a specific cluster of ancient oaks. Sarah realized then that this wasn't random instinct. This was a calculated, cognitive decision by a wild animal to seek out the only beings capable of changing the course of fate. The lion's pace quickened as they neared the shadows of the trees, his urgency becoming a physical force that pulled Sarah forward into the unknown. As they reached the canopy of the great oaks, the temperature dropped, and the bright morning sun was replaced by dappled shade. Arthur stopped abruptly, his body stiffening. He lowered his head and let out a soft, mournful moan, nudging a pile of fallen leaves near a moss-covered log. Sarah pushed aside a heavy branch and gasped. There, lying face down and motionless, was Ranger Thomas, a man who had dedicated 30 years to protecting this sanctuary. His skin was a ghostly gray, and his breathing was so shallow it was almost non-existent. Beside him lay his broken radio and a half-empty water canteen. It was clear what had happened, a sudden, massive cardiac event brought on by the humidity and the physical toll of his morning patrol. Sarah immediately dropped to her knees, her professional training taking over. She checked for a pulse. It was thready, erratic, and fading fast. "Thomas, can you hear me?" she shouted, but there was no response.
Wake up!
She quickly pulled a portable defibrillator and oxygen mask from her kit, her hands moving with frantic precision. What happened next was something Sarah would tell her grandchildren. As she began chest compressions, Arthur didn't retreat. He didn't return to the sunlit meadow to hunt. Instead, the lion lay down just 3 feet away, forming a golden semicircle around Sarah and the fallen ranger. He acted as a living shield, his ears pricked for any other predators that might be drawn to the scene. Every time Sarah leaned into a compression, Arthur would let out a low vibration from his chest, not a growl, but a purr-like resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very ground. "I'm trying, Arthur.
Done.
I'm trying," Sarah
You're gonna be
whispered,
fine. Just
sweat
hold on.
dripping from her forehead despite the cool shade. She used the radio on her shoulder to call for an emergency medical evacuation, her voice cracking as she gave their coordinates. Throughout the ordeal, the lion's presence was a strange comfort. He wasn't a threat. He was a partner in this rescue. He watched the AED pads being applied, he watched the oxygen being administered, and he never once bared his teeth. He stayed perfectly still, his eyes fixed on Thomas's face, waiting for a sign of life with a level of focus that was profoundly human. The sound of a distant engine began to hum, growing into a roar as the backup medical team tore through the meadow in a specialized off-road ambulance. As the vehicle skidded to a halt near the tree line, the paramedics jumped out, momentarily frozen by the sight of a massive lion guarding a doctor and a dying man. "Stay back. He's with us," Sarah yelled, waving them over. Arthur, sensing the shift in energy, stood up. He didn't charge. He simply backed away into the tall grass, giving the humans space to work, but his eyes never left Thomas. The team worked like a well-oiled machine. They loaded Thomas onto a stretcher, the wheels sinking into the soft earth. As they began the frantic trek back to the ambulance, something incredible happened. Arthur didn't stay behind in the shade. As the ambulance sped off across the green expanse, the lion began to run alongside it. With powerful, rhythmic strides, he kept pace with the vehicle, his golden mane flowing back, his muscles rippling under his hide. It was a spectacular display of raw power and singular devotion. In the back of the ambulance, Sarah watched through the rear window, tears blurring her vision. The king of the meadows was escorting his friend to safety. He ran for nearly 2 miles, never faltering, until they reached the main gates of the medical facility. Only then, as the siren wailed and the gates began to close, did Arthur slow to a halt. He didn't turn back immediately. He sat at the gate, a solitary golden figure against the backdrop of the vibrant green hills, watching as the doors of the clinic swallowed the man he had saved. Inside the surgery suite, the atmosphere was electric. Thomas was rushed into emergency bypass. Sarah sat in the hallway, her hands still stained with the dust of the meadow, unable to shake the image of the lion at the gate. She walked to a window that overlooked the perimeter fence. Arthur was still there. He had moved to a small rise in the ground, lying down in the grass, his head resting on his paws, facing the building. He stayed there through the heat of the afternoon and into the soft purple of the American twilight, a silent sentry waiting for word on a life he had refused to let go. Late that evening, the heavy doors of the intensive care unit swung open. Thomas was stable. He was weak, his voice a mere whisper, but he was alive. When Sarah sat by his bed, the first thing he did was reach for her hand. His eyes weren't filled with the confusion of a heart attack patient. They were filled with a deep, ancient knowing. Is he still outside?" Thomas rasped. Sarah nodded, a smile breaking across her tired face. "He hasn't moved an inch, Thomas. He's waiting for you." It was then that the full story came to light. 20 years ago, Thomas had found a mangled, starving cub caught in an illegal snare. The cub's mother was gone, and the wound was infested. Against every regulation in the book, Thomas had taken the cub into his own home, bottle feeding him, cleaning his wounds, and eventually releasing him back into the Whispering Meadows. He had never spoken of it, fearing he would lose his job for interfering with nature. But nature has a much longer memory than man. That cub had grown into Arthur, and for 2 decades, he had watched over the man who had given him a second chance at life. The next morning, the staff did something unprecedented. They wheeled Thomas's bed out to the glass-walled sunroom that faced the meadow. As the sun rose, painting the grass in shades of lime and gold, Arthur stood up. He walked right to the edge of the safety fence, only feet away from the glass. Thomas pressed his hand against the pane, and Arthur let out a low, soft rumble that vibrated through the glass and into Thomas's chest. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered connection, a debt of life repaid in full. Arthur took one long, lingering look at his old friend, then turned and vanished into the sea of green, his duty finally done. This story reminds us that we share this planet with souls we often fail to understand. Kindness isn't just a human trait. It's a universal bridge that spans across species. When we choose to help a creature in need, we aren't just changing their world. We might be saving our own future selves. If Arthur and Thomas's bond touched your heart today, please share this video. Let's remind the world that even the fiercest kings of the wild know how to bow in the presence of love. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories that prove the heart knows no boundaries. Until next time, remember, a little kindness goes a long way, even into the deepest parts of the wild.